synchronize our breathing. About 7 years ago, I was working in a rehab centre in Perth, Western Australia. And I went down the elevator to get my next client. And when I went up to meet this guy, I remember getting this shock, like, you know, those times where you get a kind of a soul shock. And it kind of rocked me. Because as I looked at this guy, he was yellow. And I mean, like, yellow eyes, yellow skin. He smelled like formaldehyde. As I shook his hand was cold and clammy. And I couldn't shake this feeling that, my God, I'm looking at a dead man. And it rocked me. I remember thinking, I don't know if I can help this guy. I really don't know if I can help this guy. And in that moment, I realized I need to be able to get to people earlier than this. Like, I needed to be able to get to people earlier than them walking into a rehab center to come and see people. So I realized in that moment that, you know, the earlier we can catch it, the easier it is to do something about it. So, welcome to the Neuroscience of Addiction. The idea of this talk, this presentation, is to first of all change the way we see addiction. So I want to step out of that shame, punitive judgment model that we have right now that isolates people, that condemns people, that puts people in jail. And I want to show people that, look, everyone's addicted to something. Addiction caresses everybody in some way. And if we can focus on what it is that's missing for people, there's a void that people have. And if we can focus on that void and fill that void, there's no need for an addiction anymore. So if you're wondering if this talk is for you because you might not be addicted, I'm going to show you that everyone's addicted in some way. So what is addiction? The dictionary definition is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance or activity. In the rehab centres, we used to say it's the use or misuse of an inappropriate behaviour to avoid one's perceived reality. So it's really interesting to note the use of the words misuse and use there, or use and misuse, the inclusion of those two words. Most people think they don't have a problem because they're not misusing. So I'm not an alcoholic, but I drink every day. Yeah? So quite often it's the misuse and the use. So what are some of the things we're addicted to nowadays? Maybe if I'll get you guys to shout some stuff out. I was actually going to get you to turn to each other, but there's not enough people. Dan will be talking to himself. So maybe can you just popcorn style shout some of the things out that we're addicted to nowadays? Sugar, Facebook, yeah. Sex. Thank you. Cigarettes. Netflix, yeah. Coca-Cola, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So most people just think drugs and alcohol when they think of addiction, yeah? But there's so many different addictions. So alcohol, drugs, pharmaceuticals is a big one that people don't realise that they can get addicted to. Pharmaceuticals is a huge addiction in both the States and in Australia, and I'm sure all over the world. Cigarettes, sex, porn, food, sugar, shopping. So sugar's a huge one. Sugar's like in everything that we have nowadays, and they say it's as addictive as cocaine. And if you think sugar doesn't affect you, try going without it for a while and see what it does to your body. It's incredible. Okay, so television. Phones, computers, Tinder. Yeah? How many people know they're addicted to Tinder? Facebook. Here's a really interesting one. Spirituality. How is spirituality an addiction? How many people have been to a Buddha? Yeah. So there's a spiritual bypass that happens. There's people searching for something and like not being present and not being themselves and looking for something outside of ourselves. Exercise is another interesting one, in work. So there's some addictions that we have that we class as good addictions. So we kind of, people who are really successful and they have a good business and they have, like money in the bank and, cars and a house, and we deem them to be really successful. But quite often they have an addiction and they feel just as empty and just as alone inside. And I know I was one of these guys. In Australia, I had houses all over Australia. I had cars and bikes and toys, and I was miserable inside. So some drugs may surprise you, or not surprise you, I guess. There's like drugs and all kinds of everything that we use nowadays. There's drugs in personal care products. There's drugs in food. There's a new. I actually watched a video today on McDonald's and like some of these fast food joints, and they don't use the word addiction. They use the two words they use are craveability and snackability. But it's basically, that's what they go for. That's what they strive for, to get people, to get people hooked. So it's actually just another word for addiction. So there's 3 points I want to leave you with today. Number one, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. So I'm going to show you what that is today. Number two, addicts don't choose to become addicts, not consciously anyway. And number three, addiction is completely reversible. So one of the things that I want to change, look, AA have been amazing, and they're an amazing, foundation, an amazing group, and they do some incredible work, and they have done for centuries, for a long time, and they've changed millions of lives. But one of the things I want to change is the fact that they get people to stand up for the rest of their life, affirming that they're an addict, like 20 years later, So I'm no longer an addict. I'm no longer a junkie. I'm no longer an alcoholic. And I think, what a dumb affirmation. Like I am, the next two words that come after I am are the most powerful affirmation you can say in the universe. So the other thing is, I notice, people get addicted to meetings, get addicted to having a sponsor. So if they stop going to a meeting or they stop going to a sponsor, they fall off the wagon. Well, to me, that means you haven't addressed the addiction yet. So if you address the addiction, there's no need to get addicted to anything else. Okay, so where does addiction stem from? This is a picture of me and my twin sister. We're about 18 months old there. And as you can see, I've got a really worried look on my face. I don't know what the photographer's doing, but it's scaring me. My sister looks really happy about it. So, is it hereditary? So there's a lot of people, there's a school of thought that says alcoholism and drug use is hereditary. Because look, and it would be easy to say that because my father's father was an alcoholic. And then my father was an alcoholic, and then I'm an alcoholic. So easy to go, yeah, it's just hereditary. But only in the sense that my father's father didn't teach my father how to deal with his emotions and how to deal with himself and how to be with himself. And he taught him how to drink and drink his problems away. In the same sense that, like my mum had diabetes and her mum had diabetes and her mum's mum had diabetes. But only because they had shit food and they didn't, they didn't exercise. So it was hereditary in that sense. But then, if it was that hereditary, everyone would have it because, like, certain members of the family will not get it, or they change their diet and then it stops. So they can actually change that. So I don't think it's hereditary. Is there a chemical imbalance? They can study the brains and the systems of people who have addiction, and there's absolutely a chemical imbalance. But which came first? Did they have the chemical imbalance first, or did they have the addiction first? So often it's the addiction. Once we get into the addiction, that the chemical imbalance happens. And that's closely related with is there a brain defect? Again, they can study people who have addictions and there may be a defect in the brain. But again, which came first? There's many people who have brain defects who don't become addicts. And then is it cellular deficiency? So again, once they study this, they'll find that there's a cellular deficiency within certain people if they're addicted. But, the cells crave what we feed them. So again, which one came first? Is it the addiction or the cellular deficiency? So you stop sugar and your cells, every single one of your cells will crave sugar. And it'll scream to your body and your brain, God, give me sugar, give me sugar, give me sugar. But we didn't start with that. So I don't think it's cellular deficiency either. Okay, this little guy. So this guy's name is Kalen. And in this photo, he's about 14 or 15 years of age. And this kid idolized his father. So he grew up with a dad. His dad was into drugs and into alcohol. And this kid's first, like, he just idolized his dad. His first words were dad, 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 dad. I think his second word was dad work, dad work, dad work. So this kid idolized his dad, but then his dad just didn't have time for him. His dad was always drunk and using drugs and just never there. He was at work all the time. So then they started to create this gap between them. When this kid was 9 years of age, his father had him by the throat, up against the wall, wanting to punch him in the face. I'm this kid's father. This is my son. And I remember in that moment, fuck, what happened? You know, what? I spent my whole life saying, I'm never going to be like my dad. I'm never going to be like my dad. I'll never be like my dad. And in that moment, I realized I'd turned into my dad. And I knew I had to do something about it. I had to change. I had to shift in that moment. And I'm blessed that I was able to repair this relationship with this beautiful young man. So most change doesn't happen until the pain of where you are becomes greater than the fear of moving forward, the fear or the uncomfortableness of moving forward. The trouble is, everybody has a different level of pain. So for some people, the pain of anybody finding out, or the pain of the embarrassment of people knowing what they're into, is enough to get them to stop or to change their ways. For some people, just the fact that they know they want more is enough to change. But for some people, they need a big wake-up call, or they need a big shift in their life, and sometimes that's not enough. So there was a guy who came to see me. I had a phone call one morning when I was in the rehab centre. It was reception, and they said, can you see an emergency client? And I said, yeah, sure. So clear my calendar. And this guy came in and sat in front of me, and he'd been in the program for a while. He'd done the program a couple of times. His name was Peter, and he was an alcoholic. He had a big red bulbous nose, like in really red skin. And this guy drank from the time he woke up to when he blacked out, so he can't even remember when he stopped drinking. So he was a full-blown alcoholic. And he sat in front of me in this chair this morning, and he said to me, Dean, they just brought me back to life. He said, I remember waking up, like they used the paddles on him. He said, I remember waking up on this cold steel gurney of the hospital bed and realised that I'd died. And you know what? Sadly, this guy came and did the program a little bit again, but then he didn't come back again. And I found out that he'd gone back to drinking. So even death isn't enough pain for somebody, for some people. And it's really important to understand, guys, that people don't start off as addicts. People don't start off being an addict. They start off way back here. They start off just using and enjoying and thinking it's fun, or it can become an escape. So what's missing for people? I'm just going to play you a little YouTube clip. Sorry I'm racing through this, guys, but we've got a bit of a time schedule. So I just want to play this YouTube clip and see what you think.
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious. We all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now, so at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have coloured balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex, everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
So the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. It's connection, yeah? However, it can't be just any connection. When I became a junkie, I was in an intimate relationship. I had a loving partner, and it was a good relationship. I had a good, okay parental connection, but I've also worked with many addicts who have amazing parents and have an amazing parental connection. How many people know friends in their circle who may be addicted? Or friends of friends who may be addicted? Yeah. So even though we have friends and a good friendship and a good circle of friends, quite often a person in that circle, one or more, may become addicted to something. And also siblings. Even though we grow up in the same household, and sometimes it's a great household, sometimes there's beautiful, loving family and a great upbringing. Not often, but sometimes that happens. And still somebody will become an addict. So it can't be just any connection. First and foremost, it's a loss of connection with oneself. So when we lose that connection with ourselves, we inevitably lose the connection with other people. How many people recognize that when they feel lost and when they feel kind of disconnected from themselves, that they automatically kind of isolate themselves from other people? We feel isolated, yeah? So this is why it's important, to actually step out of the shame, judgment, punitive model and actually to get people realizing that they need help, they need connection, they need support, they need love. This disconnection often happens in the subconscious. So the subconscious is like an iceberg. What you see on the very tip is only a fraction of what's actually going on underneath. The subconscious is like galaxies. So in the daytime we can't see the stars, and we talk as if they just come out at night. Yeah, but they're actually there the whole time. We also greatly underestimate the amount of stars, the number of stars in the sky. And when we look up, we think that's all we see is what's there. But when we travel out of town and a moonlit night or a moonless night, and we look up, we're kind of overwhelmed by the amount of stars we see. But it's only when we actually study anatomy and we look through telescopes that we start to see the profoundness and the vastness of what's actually out there. And many of the lights or the points of lights that we think are stars are actually entire other galaxies. And so it is with the subconscious. So in the subconscious, we're only barely aware of what's actually really going on. In the conscious mind. So the conscious mind, we have like 10% control and awareness. The subconscious controls 60 to 70% of how we think, feel, behave, and believe. And unconsciously, we have 10 to 20%. So I just want to talk about the brain for a moment and show you who's actually really in control. And I want to talk about 3 parts of the brain. But I want you to understand, first of all, that there's actually 7 different parts to the brain. And as we evolve and generate a new part to the brain, the old part of the brain doesn't die off and become obsolete. So unlike any other cell in the body, when you regenerate a new cell in the body, the old one dies off and the new one takes over. But with the brain, both parts still function. So the 3 parts that we're going to look at today, first of all, the brain stem. The reptilian brain. So your brain stem is the oldest part of your brain. It's the reptilian brain. It's all about survival. So it's just about fight, flight, or freeze. So it's about safety, and it's about saving my life. So it's all it can do is react. It has no emotion. It has no feeling. It has no language. All it is about react. Sorry, going back. The limbic system, so the mammalian brain. So the limbic system's also about safety, but it's about feeling safety. So nurture me, love me, feed me, clothe me. So it's all about feelings. Now the limbic system can only can only feel in relation to what the reptilian brain responds to. So it also has no language. It can only feel in relation to what this reptilian brain reacts to. Now these 2 parts of the brain are known as your old brain. Within your old brain, every single experience you've ever had within your life is stored there. Now, let alone is every experience you've ever had in your life stored there, every sense of every experience you've had is stored there. So every sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, every feeling that you've had is stored within your old brain. So think about that for a second. Think of the millions and millions of experiences that we've had in our lives. And everything's stored there. Now they also know this because they can operate on a person while the patient's awake, because the person has your brain has a neural system, but it doesn't have a nervous system, so it doesn't feel pain like the rest of the body. So they're able to operate on patients when they're awake, and when they poke and prod certain parts of the brain, the patient would have a vivid recollection of a memory they had no conscious recollection of before. How many people recognize sometimes getting a smell of something and it takes you back to a memory? Or hearing a sound, or seeing somebody, and it'll take us back to a memory, and you remember everything that's going on in that memory. The feeling, the sound, the smell, the taste, the touch, everything. So these 2 parts of the old brain. Then we have the cerebral cortex, which is your human logical mind, your intellect. And it's also about safety, but it's about understanding things. If I can understand this, if I can make sense of this, if I can work it out and then soothe the other two parts of the brain where all of our traumas lie, well, then we'll be okay. So the cerebral cortex is larger than the other two parts of the brain. We only share this with two other mammals. So we share this with dolphins, who have a cerebral cortex that's 5 times larger than ours. We think we're the intelligent species. They're actually starting to realize now that dolphins are far more intelligent than we are, and that they can communicate with each other on different parts of the world. So, and also we share them with apes. So apes have a much smaller cerebral cortex than we do. So this is the part of the brain that's all about the me, the I am, the part that focuses on ourselves or that we think we are. Now, the challenges with these parts of the brain is that none of them communicate. So they don't communicate with each other. I'll give you an example. One of my earlier childhood memories, I was maybe 8 years of age and I was walking home from the shop. And again, I can remember this like vividly. It's a beautiful sunny day. I've got a brown paper bag with milk and bread in my left hand. In my right hand, I'm carrying a rolled up newspaper. So my dad asked me to get a newspaper. So I'm walking down the road, just minding my own business, happy kid. And on the other side of the road, maybe 20 meters up, there was a boxer, a breed of dog. Everyone know what a boxer is? Yeah, it's like a breed of dog. So as I'm walking up and I saw the dog and it's outside the property, like out the front of the property. And I mean, we grew up with dogs. I was never scared of dogs. We had big Alsatians and I love dogs, So as I'm walking up, I went, "G'day, boy, how you going?" As I spoke to the dog, it jumped up, ran across the road and attacked me. So it latched onto my leg. I froze and then I whacked the dog with this newspaper and it took off and ran away and left me there bleeding. So my reptilian brain, my brain stem, was freeze first of all and then fight, to get it off. What do you think? So if my mammalian brain can only feel in relation to what that's reacting to, what do you think I was feeling in that moment? Anyone? Fear? Yeah. Anger, maybe, yeah. I was feeling vulnerable. I was feeling alone. I was feeling helpless, kind of powerless. I was kind of feeling really almost frozen there. So I limped home. And when I got home, my parents took me up to the hospital and had to give me a tetanus shot and stitch me up. And while we're at the hospital, like my dad's talking to me and he's saying, "Oh, look, it's not the dog's fault." I say, "Is the dog okay, Dean?" Look, it's obviously the dog's been beaten with something, something round like a pipe or a newspaper, and that's why it's come out and attacked you. And, like we're a dog family and I love dogs and I didn't want to get the dog put down. So I was kind of getting into this. And then so my cerebral cortex is letting the other two parts of my brain know, yeah, okay, that makes sense. The dog was beaten by something. And yeah, that's why it came out and attacked me. So all well and good, yeah? But what do you think happened the next time I saw a dog? Yeah? Yeah. So what took over? And it didn't matter what size the dog was. It could have been a small dog or a big dog. Like as soon as I saw the next dog, so the reptilian brain took over. And then what do you think I was feeling when I saw that dog? Yeah, all the same stuff that I experienced when I actually had the real incident. So, who's actually in control here? Think how many times people say to you, "Why are you overreacting?" How many people recognize they overreact sometimes? Yeah? And sometimes we don't know why we overreact. We have all of these buttons that seem to get pushed. Sometimes we get angry that we're angry because we don't know why we're angry. That was me, a big one. Yeah, I had no idea I was angry. And I was angry that I was angry. So none of these parts communicate with each other. And then the reptilian brain can take over at any point in time. These traumas all get locked within our system, within our nervous system. And then the nervous system will do everything it can to protect these traumas. And the trouble with the nervous system is it has access to our senses, sight, smell, sound, taste, touch. It has access to all of our emotions, anger, sadness, fear, depression. It has access to our subconscious. So suddenly we find ourselves overreacting, we find ourselves putting on weight, we find ourselves acting in ways that we have no idea why we're doing what we're doing. So 85% of your ego personality, so 85% of how you think, feel and believe about yourself is fully developed by the time you're 8 years of age. Before we even develop an intellect. So like I said before, the intellect is all about trying to work things out and make sense of and understand. And the problem is us as adults is we have this human logical mind that's trying to work things out and understand and make sense of it. Look, I know I was loved, I know they did their best, I know they had their own stuff going on, and soothe the nervous system where all the trauma lies. But a child doesn't have an intellect, and a child doesn't develop an intellect until after 8 years of age. Between 2 and 7 years of age, a child's in theta brainwave, which means they equate everything to love. So a child can't intellectualize anything as simple as dad going to work to provide a better life for me than he had because he loves me. A child goes, where's my dad? Why isn't my dad around? And they feel their mum there all the time. And because we equate everything to love, what happens is they start to look for situations and circumstances to confirm why dad doesn't love us. So maybe, you know, like you'll be talking one day, dad doesn't listen. I'm not worth listening to, yeah? Or maybe like you want dad to play and he's too tired when he comes home from work. I'm not important enough. I'm not important enough to play. And then what happens is the subconscious picks up on this and starts to run our life according to the story that I'm not good enough. I'm not worth listening to. I'm not valuable. And there's a missingness, a void there that we go chasing, this love that's not there. And this love, this missingness, this void gets registered within our nervous system. So then we have the story as well. If my own father doesn't love me, why would anybody else? So the subconscious starts to run our life according to our story. And remember, the subconscious controls 60 to 70% of how we are, of how we operate. Consciously, we have 10% control. But with our conscious mind, what we do is as we grow up, I'm going to find someone who's going to be completely different to my dad. Well, I'm going to find someone who's going to love me, they're going to nurture me, they're going to make me feel like the bee's knees, they're going to listen to me, they're going to make me feel important, and they're going to be everything that I was missing back there. And when we first meet them, we go, oh my God, my soulmate, my other half, oh my God, you complete me. And we even start to use this language, yeah? Like, oh my God, I can't remember a time when we haven't been together. I feel like I've known you forever. Yeah? Because it feels like everything that wasn't back there. But when the honeymoon period wears off, those cracks that start to appear in the relationship are always the same cracks that we experience as kids. So we leave that one and we go to another one. Or we leave that one and we go to another one. Or we just settle in for the long haul and feel like we're never going to have our needs met. And have that void, that missingness inside. So with such a big void inside, it's only natural that we want to fill it with something. Just stop and think for a moment. Maybe just take a second to think, what am I filling my void with? Everyone has a story. Everyone has a subconscious story. Everyone. This is what I work with primarily. What am I filling my void with? Is it work? Am I busy at work? Is it drugs? Is it alcohol? Is it cigarettes? Is it social media? Is it somebody else? So addicts don't consciously choose to become addicts. They start off just using like everybody else. And then something else happens. Something takes over. So let's have a look at how we lose this connection with ourselves. What is it that disconnects us? I want to talk about voids and values. So everyone knows what a value is, yeah? Something that's really important to you, something that you hold in high esteem. So do you know your values actually stem from your voids? So the things that are missing drive your values. So whatever we were missing as kids, whatever we experienced as that void, that missingness, becomes really important to us. So your voids give way to your values, and then your values give way to your destiny. So we communicate to the world in terms of our value system. Did you know, like most police officers, judges, lawyers had a perception of some injustice done to them when they were young. And so what becomes really important to them is justice. And then that gave way to their destiny. They say most school teachers, counsellors, therapists have some experience of not being heard or not being understood or not being safe when they were kids. So what becomes really important to them is safety and being heard and communication and listening to people. And so that gives way to their destiny. They say a lot of nurses, doctors, people who work in the health system have a void of ill health when they were young. So what becomes important to them is good health and helping people to be healthy. So your void gives way to your value gives way to your destiny. Everyone has a different value system. They're like fingerprints, yeah? Because everybody has a different experience. Even if you grew up in the same family, how many people recognize they have a completely different reality of, of their upbringing compared to their siblings? Or one of their siblings has a different reality, yeah? So you grew up in the same environment, but how we come out and how we think about our upbringing was so different. So they're like fingerprints. Everyone has a different value system. And like I said, how you communicate to the world is in alignment with your value system. So everything that aligns with your value system, you call it good. Everything that goes against your value system, you call it bad or you negate it. So when it aligns, you gravitate toward it. When it doesn't, you gravitate away from it. I'll give you an example. You're inspired by your value system, by the way. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning. That's what gets you motivated. That's what gets you going in the morning. So because I had such an angry, controlling, violent father, like I had no freedom as a kid. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't, I couldn't make my own decisions. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't allowed to have any feelings unless they were happy. And, so I felt like I was just suppressed the whole time. So what became really, really important to me and what was high in my value system is freedom and independence, and also acknowledgement and attention became really important to me. So these values became really important. And then I started to look for that stuff in my life. And my perception, the way I was getting freedom was to have financial freedom. Like I said, houses and cars and money and all of that stuff. And my perception of that was that it was going to give me freedom. The truth is it actually made me more stuck and more trapped. The more I got, the more I needed, the more I wanted, the less I felt that I had. And I actually started to feel more and more pressure and more fear of losing it all until I did. My partner's values were very different to mine, my ex-partner. Her values were family, connection, like family time. Because when she was a kid, her family separated, her mum and dad separated. So her void was not having this family connection and this family unit together. So we'd go out and she'd be looking at things that really inspired her in terms of her value system. I'd be looking at things that inspired me in terms of my value system. So I'd be looking at business opportunities and, money books and stuff when we're out. She'd be looking at clothes and, kids' clothes and stuff for the home. So she was really inspired in her value system. I was inspired in mine. I had an attention deficit disorder in terms of her value system. And she had that in mine. I was only inspired by my values. So, values, attention, freedom, independence, safety, family, all the things that are important to me, money, all stemmed from how I was feeling as a kid, lonely, trapped, dependent, fear, isolation, and stuck. So these voids gave way to my values. And the way I learned how to get these values was by doing things like going to the gym or, connecting with friends or, doing things that I loved, like riding my motorcycle and, going for rides and having this freedom that I could just go off and do what I wanted. But then when life started to get tough for me and get rough for me, and I started to lose these values, so the attention, like when I started to feel isolated and alone or pressured, and I'd lose these values and I lost my family connection and I lost my freedom because I felt like I was getting trapped. And then because I've lost those, I have lost the sense of safety. And the truth is I have this all there anyway. It was a perception of these things that they were giving me. So it wasn't actually, they weren't even real. But I lost my safety, I lost my independence, and I lost my money. And when I got to this point, all I was left with was a void. So this here is depression. Depression is when you've lost everything that you loved to live for. Everything that got you up in the morning, everything that inspired you. That's depression. And you'll never cure depression with antidepressants. Antidepressants don't cure depression. They'll stop you from spiraling down. So look, if you're on antidepressants, don't stop them. Because they do help and they stop people spiraling down any further. But they won't cure depression. Every time we're reminded of these things, like when we see people that are out and about and they're happy and they seem to have their life together, these things that we are missing come back and remind us, and they poke us and they prod us in the heart, and we feel even more down and we feel even more depressed and we feel even more lost. And then we find that we need to take whatever it is that we're doing. So we get even more lost in TV, or we get more lost in alcohol or drugs or food or whatever our addiction is. So then it becomes this big snowball where suddenly that becomes bigger than we are. So when I was using, it got to a point where I hated myself. I hated the drug. I hated myself. Every time I put that needle in my arm, I hated the fact that I was doing that, and I hated the drug, and I hated my life, but I couldn't stop. Now, I didn't start off like that. I started off thinking it was great and having a good time and just partying, and but it was masking something that I never ever felt inside. I never felt complete and whole because I had that void, that missingness, ever since I was a little kid. So there's a process that I do called quantum shift, which we go back to where we generate the story as kids, and we get rid of that story back there. So I worked as a counsellor for loads and loads of years, working in rehab centres, and I did counselling and couples counselling. But I found that counselling kept people stuck in that story, and it kept revamping the story. Whereas this quantum shift process, we go back there and we get rid of the story, so it completely changes the perception of what's going on. Probably one of the most powerful things that I get to do with people. So the three things that I wanted you to remember in the beginning. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. What's the opposite of addiction? Connection. But not just any connection. Yeah, connection with self. One person. Well done. Addicts don't choose to become addicts, so they don't consciously choose to become addicts. It kind of happens. And I remember with these guys, the Yellow Man, and this other guy, Peter. My desire and my want for them to change wasn't as great as their need to continue. And it becomes a need in the end. Addiction is completely reversible. Like I said, I'm no longer a junkie, I'm no longer an addict. It's completely reversible. So is it okay with you guys? I just want to share a little bit about an online program that I've just created. We're about to launch in the next couple of days. Can I just spend a couple of minutes doing that? Is that okay? Awesome. So this program is called Addictionary. It's a 5-unit, 16-week program. It's an online program. And the reason I created this program was when I was working in the rehab centre, I used to get calls all the time from people who lived in outback Australia who couldn't access our help. And there were also people who couldn't come in, or who didn't want to come into the centre because they didn't want anyone else knowing that they had a problem. So the thought of them going into a centre to get help was just, they couldn't even fathom that. And the third reason is there are a lot of people who couldn't afford it. So it was really important for me to be able to reach these people. So this program that I've been working on has been like a 5-year project. And it's been great that it's been 5 years because I've adapted it and, changed it a lot. It started off as a 12-week program, so it's now a 5-unit, 16-week program. And we don't focus on the addiction, or we don't focus on drug or alcohol or so, because it's all the same stuff, guys. There's no point in focusing on that. So it's more like a life skills program. We look at boundaries, self-esteem. We look at, Unit 1's all about tuning into the present. So what's going on in my life right now? What's happening right now? Unit 2 is about your relationship with yourself and the world. How do I see myself? Your ability to have a relationship with anybody else is directly relative to your ability to have a relationship with yourself. If you can't relate with you and your little kid inside, there's no way you're going to be able to relate with anybody else, even your own kids, because we end up parenting from our own pain. Unit 3, embracing your shadow side. So we look at guilt, shame, depression, grief and loss. So what we perceive to be heavy topics, but they're not heavy when you get them out, when we shed some light on them. And then Unit 4, understanding your past. So what happened? How did I become the way I am? What are those things that actually happened back there to create this being and the events in my life right now and how I'm living my life? And then Unit 5 is also all about constructing a life outside of addiction. So what do I do now? Now that I understand, now that I know, how do I change that? What do I do differently? So it's we're actually going to launch it in the next few days, and we're going to do an introductory offer. So the first 50 people who sign up, it's going to be $297, so 3 payments of $99, and then it goes doubles basically. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to talk to me afterwards about that, I'm going to stick around and share some. Have some questions and talk to me about whatever you need to. So I'm going to give you some practical steps as well, guys, to take away. So if you find that, you know, if you seriously think and know that there's something that you need to change and that you know that you're using something a lot more than you really want to be, then first of all, admit that you need help. It's probably one of the most important things. It sounds really stupid and really simple, but it's the most important thing, is to admit, look, this is bigger than me. And I remember when I got to that point and I went, fuck, this is bigger than me. You know, I can't do this on my own. And it's a hard one for a guy, especially men. But it's a hard one for anybody. One of the reasons I run men's groups now, I run men's circles in different parts of the world, because it's important for me that men actually get to be able to support other men and to have support from other men. Because we don't admit that we need help. And even, you know, like seek the help out, but also pay for it, guys. It's important, you know, it's worth it. If you think education's expensive, consider the cost of ignorance, or consider the cost of addiction. Consider the cost, let alone financially, but the cost of your, you know, on your health, the cost in your relationships, the cost in on your connections with people. So identify your addiction. So what is it that I'm using? You know, what am I using too much? Identify it. What is it? And then create a why. If you don't have a why, it will always be why not. So what's my why? Why do I want to change? Why do I want to stop? So for me, like when I had my son by the throat up against the wall, I was like, that's not who I want to be. And I don't want my son to have a father like that. That's not the guy that I want to be. I want to tap into that guy that I knew was deep down inside. Even when I was a junkie, every time I used, even though I hated myself, I knew there was a deeper part of me that was way better than that. I knew there was a part of me that was more than that. So what's your why? And the why has to be about you. If your why is about somebody else, so if your why is because your partner wants you to stop, and then your partner leaves, then your why's just walked out the door, and you're left with a really big why not. Apply buffers. So if I've got to walk between me and you, then it's really easy just to get to you, yeah? But if I put a chair and a desk and a table and other things in the way, I'm going to have to get around that stuff to get to you. Sometimes that's all you need to stop the urges, because you're going to get cravings no matter what it is. If you stop sugar, you stop cooked food, you're going to go through what a junkie goes through. You'll go through urges, you know, withdrawals, you'll go through depression, you'll go through the same stuff. But if you have things that are in the way, then sometimes even just like a 5-minute deterrent or a half an hour deterrent, so go for a walk, go for a bike ride, drink a glass of water, sometimes that's enough to stop it, to change the urge. Make a conscious choice to change. Again, this sounds really stupid. It sounds really simple. But often we don't make that conscious choice. You know what? I'm done. I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. And it doesn't matter how many times you might have tried before. It doesn't matter how many times you've relapsed. Like the last time I relapsed was the very best relapse of my life. Because I was so certain in that last relapse that I don't want to be doing this anymore. I wanted something different. So make a conscious choice to change. Never just stop. So if you just stop what you're doing, you'll end up with that void again. So if you just stop, there's a missingness. There's a, oh my God, you know, it's almost like we're punishing ourselves. So always replace it with something, but replace it with something that's good for you. So if you're going to stop smoking, eat carrots. You know, they say carrots actually have a natural form of nicotine in them. So when you eat carrots, it soothes the nicotine cravings from your cells. And a lot of people, and I did when I gave up smoking, I naturally just went to carrots. So it's almost like our body has this innate knowing anyway. If you want to stop drinking, maybe, you know, like cut down for a little bit, or, you know, like, or have some alcohol-free nights if you drink every day, alcohol-free days. Maybe replace every second or third drink with water. So start to cut down, but replace it with something that's good for you. Replace it with juices. So whatever it is that you're doing, I mean, if you're on Tinder, if you're on Facebook, if you're on social media, maybe replace it with something that's going to be good for you, like exercise or yoga, or, you know, something that's actually healthy for your body. But if you just stop, you'll feel there's a missingness there. There's something I'm not allowed. And nobody likes that feeling, yeah? So as Dee mentioned, I've got a book here called Shoot Up. Shoot Up's just it's a autobiography, so it's all about my life as a junkie and as an alcoholic and all the things that I went through, and then how I kind of turned that around and worked in rehab centres. Probably one of the most cathartic things that I got to do, like in writing this and editing and re-editing it and re-editing it. And yeah, it was a really cool thing to be able to do and to write, and I still cry when I read it, you know, because of some of the things in there that I can't believe I did and got involved in. So yeah, that's available tonight. And guys, if you have any questions, I'm going to hang around here for a while, so if you want to come and talk to me, please come up and talk to me. And thank you for coming and listening to me today, and thank you, Dee, for allowing me to come and share this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. I love sharing this, and like I said, it's really, really important for me. You know, if we can catch it early enough, we can do something about it. It's easier to do something about it. So, thank you.
Do you guys have any questions? Sorry, I'm very loud. Or you want to hang out later and ask Dean like in person? Or you want to ask now? No?
Does anyone have any questions?
I actually have a question. I read your book, but people here, they don't really know how you stopped and what stopped you. What was that thing? And who actually helped you to stay sober and to realize that you're not coming back anymore and become actually a transformational angel for other people after that?
Great question. So for me, I actually, I was a junkie first, and the way I stopped drugs, look, I just knew I had to I was in Australia and I was using all the time, and I'd lost everything. Everything was in the pawnbrokers. I'd stolen off everybody I know, lied off my own, stolen off my own family, my own newborn baby and partner. And the only way I knew to stop was just to get away from it. I had to get out of Australia. I tried to stop while I was there, and I actually gave up for 3 months. But essentially, I ran into somebody who, everyone I knew had it. And then, things weren't so good for me. I wasn't feeling so strong inside, and eventually, I just hit it again. And I didn't start off, slow again and work my way up. I started where I left off, and I just hit it really hard. So I actually left, and I went to New Zealand. And, I did it on my own, which was a real challenge. I remember the first 3 years, I would wake up in the middle of the night, bawling my eyes out, like I was crying because I just dreamed that I'd shot up again, and it was so real. It was so, vivid, so real and I was so disappointed and gutted with myself that I'd used again and broken it. And that actually kept me going and kept me strong. But one of the challenges is when I stopped the drugs and I just turned to alcohol. So I went to New Zealand and I just became an alcoholic. It's just something they call transference. So you stop one thing and just go to another thing. And so I became an alcoholic over there for about 5 years, and then I colluded my partner in on it. So I got her involved as well. So then we were both alcoholics for a long time. And then I started to realize that I wanted more, and that I wanted to change. And I started to swap my addictions for better quality addictions. So I started to go to the gym and drink less. And, and then the gym, kept me healthy. But the truth is, even though it's a better quality addiction, it was still an addiction. It still affected my life. I still never felt good enough. I was ripped. I was the most ripped I've ever been in my life. I was going to the gym 7 days a week. And if I didn't go, I felt really bad. I felt really shit with myself. So I was addicted to going to the gym. And then that affected my relationship still. It affected how I still didn't feel good. Doesn't matter how big I got. I never, ever felt okay inside. I still had that void, that missingness, that emptiness inside. So I kind of did it on my own, but I did it the hard way, and I'm like that in my life. I tend to do things the most difficult way I can. Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions?
And what is your why? The biggest why that you have right now?
My why right now is to change. The biggest thing for me is to talk about the elephants in the room. I grew up with elephants in the room, and we weren't allowed to talk about them. We weren't allowed to share them. We weren't allowed to talk about them. And if we can talk about the elephants in the room and do something about them, we don't need elephants in the room. So it's really, really important for me to be able to help people to change that. And essentially, in the work that I do, it always comes back down to working with the connection within ourselves. When we heal that connection with ourselves, I'm a couples coach as well. I've done relationships coaching for a lot of years. And essentially what I do is I help each person to heal that child within themselves and then introduce them to the other child. And when we're okay with ourselves, we tend to be okay with other people. So.
And the last question is, you have a question? Yeah?
So if gym is something that, if gym is, you found that was a big thing for you, so you worked with it as well.
Yeah.
How do you know when something's crossed the line and become an addiction and it's not just, something you're doing?
That's a really good question.
It seems like it's healthy, no?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So if we're going to the gym or if it's work and it seems like it's a good addiction, how do we know when it becomes an unhealthy addiction? Does anyone want to share that or answer that?
When you start missing it.
Yeah.
maybe when it starts to create a conflict with the people around you, you know, people are telling you, hey, you're not the same, or you're acting kind of shitty, or you're never around anymore, or whatever. And people tell you that and give you that feedback that they're worried, and you become defensive. You don't want to give it up. What other people say is not important enough to give this other thing up that is causing conflict, but it's still more important.
Matt?
I would say when it causes inner conflict within yourself, sort of, when it evokes an emotional response from you, whether it's good or bad. So when it's creating turmoil inside yourself, so if it was gym, when you go, you feel good, and when you don't, you feel bad, and you start creating polarizing emotions inside yourself. Most addiction seems to be in that retrospect. Like when you take drugs, you hate it, but when you do, you hate it as well. But there's this inner conflict. There's no clarity around why you do it. So it's not what you do. It's not who you are. It's what you're doing. So if I go to the beach and have a surf, it's because I'm a surfer, not because I'm addicted to surfing. That would be my way of explaining it.
Yeah, great. Really good answers. And also, it's what we identify with, am I a surfer? We identify with these labels that we put on ourselves quite often, like I'm a doctor, yeah, I'm Dr. Dean. Sure, like when I'm on the toilet, am I still Dr. Dean? Or, because I meet people at parties, oh yeah, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Are you really? Or are you, like when you're on the toilet, are you a doctor or are you just a pooper like everybody else? So my response to that would be, I remember sitting with a couple who'd come to see me, and this guy, drank a lot, and he said to me, oh, look, I haven't got a problem with it, I know I can stop it, I really thought I could stop whenever I wanted. And so I said to him, okay, so when was the last time you went without it? And he said, and he couldn't remember a time. So I said, well, let's see you stop without it then. Let's see how you go. And I challenge you right now to, give it 3 months. So stop and see what happens in 3 months if you can do without it. And then he came back the next week and was like, holy crap, I had no idea that I was so addicted to alcohol. So quite often it's stopping, can I stop it? And can I feel comfortable in stopping what I'm doing? So yeah, gym's a great addiction. Yoga is a great addiction. Spirituality is a great addiction. But if I'm losing myself by doing that, or if I'm getting my identity from that, it's giving me some kind of identity or external satisfaction. So nothing of your senses, sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, nothing of your senses will ever satisfy your soul. Does that answer your question? Great question, thank you. Yeah.
So my last question is, I know that you started a men's group here in Bali, and I know that there's a lot of women empowerment groups, and it's very easy to form one and find a support group of women, but like for men, this is not very easy, and not very often that men's support groups are happening. And why you think men need support group, and what you actually do there, and what's happening with them, what kind of transformation?
Cool, good question. We all get naked? No, we don't. So I did a video blog recently about the unspoken about pressure that we put on our women in our lives. And that pressure that men put on their women is that the women know that we're suffering. The women know that we're dying inside and that we're not talking to people about what's really going on. And then we put them under this cone of silence. Don't tell anybody. Don't you mention this to anybody. And so they're not allowed to tell anyone. So they're left with this pressure of knowing that their partner's unhappy and miserable and struggling and thinking he has to do it all on his own. So I've run men's groups for years in Australia, and I do them here as well. And all we do is it's just holding space, and we just share what's going on. And you'd be amazed at what goes on in group. You'd be amazed at how emotional guys can be, and how beautiful and in touch with each other they can be. It's really, really important. So like I had a guy, and he doesn't mind me sharing this, I've checked in with him, maybe a month ago, where he sat and shared in group. He's 60-something years of age, and had been coming to group for a while. And then he voiced for the very first time in his life that he'd been sexually abused as a kid. And he broke down and he sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. as he spoke of this, for the first time ever in his life in 60-something years. And all the guys in the group held this guy and supported this guy, and they were crying. And then because he did that, another young guy spoke about that it had happened to him and spoke about how painful it was for him to be around men and that he couldn't trust men because his perception of men was that they were either going to steal my money, they were going to take my wife, or they were going to hurt me. And this is a perception that men have. And we have this masculine, like, got to be strong, got to be tough, got to work it all out ourselves. And it's bollocks, it's killing people. I mean, the suicide rate in Australia last year alone was over 4,000 suicides, like 4,000 unnecessary deaths in Australia alone. And 80% of them were male. Why do you think that is? Why? That's so sad. It's because we don't talk to each other. We don't reach out. We don't open up. And because we don't do that, because we don't talk to each other, we crave that attention. We crave that intimacy. And because we're not getting the intimacy from our brothers, if we're in relationships, what happens is, and we don't feel like we're getting in a relationship because often that dies down as well, yeah? So we start to look outside the relationship. And suddenly the lady behind the counter at the shop becomes really interesting and, start interested in us. And, oh my God, and it starts to give us that feeling that we've been craving, that connection, that intimacy. And then guys end up having affairs. I mean, both do, but it's really important for me just to let men talk, to share, to open up about what's really going on.
Another question, I think the last one, but it's very important. So I've been dating different types of guys. Some of them were addictive personalities. One of them was drug addict. One was addicted to me, and then he was violent. And some alcoholics and all this kind of like really cool dudes. So what I do, I break up and I move on, right? But sometimes I know women, they're so in love, they think that they will transform and help, and they believe in their man. And what do you think they should do when they are in this type of abusive or broken relationships?
First of all, get out. I mean, not necessarily, not always. Like anything can be healed, yeah? But it all comes back to our childhood story. It all comes back to what was missing and what happened back there. We go searching, so our perception is I never got it back there. I never had it, so I need you to give it to me. So whatever was missing, we go searching for in our relationship. Give me love, give me attention, give me safety, give me, hear me, feed me, all of that stuff. And when we go looking for that in the relationship, and we lose ourselves in that relationship. So when we change the story, we change what we go searching for, we change what we go looking for, and we change the fact that we're empty. We actually start to realize we don't need anything else. It's inside of us. So that's the best advice I can give people. I mean, we get addicted to being in these relationships as well. We get addicted to pain. We get, like somebody stays in an abusive relationship. Why would they stay there? They perceive they're going to get more if they stay than if they leave. And a lot of us get addicted to the fact, we get addicted to the ideal of a relationship. My God, I can change him. I'm sure it's going to be different. I'm sure it's going to be different. I actually just had this conversation with someone the other day, 3 years later, and she's still trying to change him, and he's not changing. So we teach other people how to treat us. Yeah.
Well, Dean, thank you so much. We have one woman who wants to buy your book already, and we will keep it for her, and she will come back tomorrow. She had to go. Okay, is it okay? Guys, thank you for your patience and for your patience and for coming out from Ubud. You came from Ubud, or are you staying here? You're staying here, but you came special for this talk, right? Yeah. Women entrepreneurs. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming here, for joining us for this amazing talk. If you don't mind, please share with us your names and addresses. So if you want to connect with you, and yeah, this book I strictly recommend. This is an amazing transformational story. Yeah, I think everyone should read it. Thank you so much, Dean.